to solve them. Before examining the agenda we are going to follow today, let me first explain again why I am convinced that the Millenium Board is very helpful for Colombia, for our country, for our people. I think that the Millenium Board can serve two purposes. The first is to bring in the outsider point of view. You might have a lesser knowledge of our country, but you can certainly help us understand in a broad sense how we are perceived overseas, and more importantly, suggest ways in which we can change negative perceptions and benefit from positive ones. Furthermore, your successful entrepreneurial background can bring fresh ideas that can help us adjust our strategies and fine-tune our policies. And second, you're becoming honorary ambassadors for Colombia. By this I mean you can actively help us both tell the true story of Colombia and build networks of people to work within your countries and business areas. We need to create permanent links in order to exchange ideas and devise ways to provide mutual support. We have complete certainty of how much Colombia has to offer to the world. The establishment of a dynamic means for change will generate great benefits for all of us. In last year, the meeting was focused essentially in the first of these areas. The ideas and suggestions that we got from you were addressed mainly toward the issues of economic management and the achievement of peace and security. With respect to the economy, your input concentrated upon three basic issues. First, the need to increase the degree of liberalization of the economy in order to further integration with world markets and attract new trade and investment partners. On this respect, the creation of more special economic zones was suggested as part of the strategy to attract foreign investment. Second, the importance of developing a more balanced export structure was stressed. It was determined that Colombia had to move away from primary resource dependence in its exports composition. The mention of special zones were acknowledged as one of the mechanisms to foster such change. Third, it was determined that the state needed to reduce its intervention in business and financial activities in order to boost the private sector. With respect to security and peace, a clear relationship between economic performance and the external perception of national security was established. Second, it was acknowledged that the confrontation of national security issues implies granting feasibility to legal economic activities, which represent an alternative to the coca cultivation. This additionally implies a well-structured education reform so as to guarantee greater job opportunities. Now, the obvious question is whether the input has been useful in improving our policies and hence our performance. The answer is definitely yes. Although we are going to cover this in more detail in the first group of sessions, let me expose the results that I found to be the most telling. As exposed to our previous gathering, positive economic growth has been regained, reaching a 3% level for year 2000 after the GDP's minus 4.3% contraction in 1999. Most importantly, growth was driven by the private sector, with its production exhibition a 3.8% growth, while the public sector exhibited a 1% contraction for the first time in almost a decade. The latter displays both the response of private investors to a renewed economic environment and the government's commitment to the fiscal adjustment policy. These achievements have resulted from a comprehensive strategy that has additionally involved the promotion of democracy, justice, territorial integrity, employment generation, respect for human rights, and the preservation of public order, the strengthening of social capital has been considered crucial in guaranteeing the sustainability of economic growth. Nevertheless, the strength and stability of this recovery depends on a continued commitment to the ongoing fiscal adjustment, in addition to the implementation of further measures in order to reestablish the solid foundations that have traditionally characterized the Colombian economy. In this sense, it is important to highlight the efforts aimed at the recovery of the financial sector through both capitalization and prudential supervision. The restructuring of this system has been crucial in conceding new dynamism to the granting of credits through the reestablishment of trust in the system, and in this way promoting private investment. Furthermore, economic growth has boosted by the export sector, which exhibited a 17% nominal growth rate. The most dynamic subsector in this sense was the chemical industry, with export growing at 12% rate. It is comforting to see the entrepreneurial driven of our businessmen. As soon as interest rates and the exchange rates were at reasonable levels, non-traditional exports grew over 15%, in real terms becoming the main force of the recovery. Our potential as an exporting nation is undeniable, and we are committed to realize this potential. The latter is also proof of a development strategy which aims for the industrial sector to become the engine of the economic growth. Additionally, my government has sustained a commitment to promote our insertion in international markets, enhancing foreign trade and investment. This is revealed in significant changes we have been introduced to the regulatory system, aiming towards the promotion of liberalization. Currently, foreign investors have equal opportunity as national investors to invest in Colombia. Being free to invest in practically every economic sector, except for national defense and security and processing and disposal of toxic wastes, without requiring prior government authorization for foreign capital entrance. Investors are free to remit capital and profits to foreign countries, and in order to reduce uncertainty, a constitutional amendment has guaranteed full compensation in the case of expropriation. In terms of the oil sector, in particular, a new policy has been implemented, granting greater profitability to investment. The state share in associative contracts was reduced from 50% to 30%, while royalties are now proportional to the size of the discovery. Additionally, trade policy aims toward further integration to international markets. A strategic export plan is being implemented, searching to exploit Colombia's possibility as an export platform. In particular, the country has special regulations for 12 free trade zones where exports are exempted from income tax and import duties on their imports. Besides, our country has created special economic export zones in certain economically depressed regions, aiming to attract investment through incentives such as tax exemptions on exports, duty-free access to inputs, and capital equipment and a special labor regime. Colombia has preferential access to over 845 million consumers in all 5 continents as a result of trade agreements and unilateral trade preferences. Nevertheless, we are still facing important challenges in various areas. Regarding our peace strategy, we are aware of the need to develop opportunities that can displace the illegal drug business, and for this purpose, it is not only necessary to reduce the feasibility of such industry, but to promote the enhancement of other economic activities. Despite the fact that 1 million jobs were created last year, unemployment remains to be one of the fundamental issues to be dealt with. In this respect, my government has the commitment to implement development projects that not only generate alternative employment opportunities to the illicit crops, but also provide health, education, and infrastructure. in larger areas of the country where historically there has been little state presence. Nevertheless, we need your help in promoting these new economic activities, and nothing will be more effective than better access to your markets. This means that in addition to the support of our counter-drug efforts, we need trade preferences. As I have stated repeatedly, Colombia could join the United States, Mexico, and Canada in the North American Free Trade Agreement, or alternatively, Colombia and the U.S. could enter into a special trade relationship. Meanwhile, trade parity with the countries that benefit from the Caribbean Basic Initiative is essential for our exports. More exports mean alternatives to illicit crops, lower unemployment, and a renewed economic activity that will be essential if we are to find a solution to our conflict and bring peace to our country. The world has to gain awareness of the fact that tolerance with respect to drug consumption will make coca plants eradication a wasted effort. It will be grown somewhere else. Now, let me briefly turn to today's agenda. The following presentation shall describe what we have done along the past year to confront those issues that have been identified as crucial in order to promote economic development and place Colombia upon a sustainable long-term economic growth path. The first presentation will be led by Luis Fernando Ramirez, Minister of National Defense. He will expose Colombia's progress with respect to 1999 regarding national security. This has entailed the strengthening of the Colombian armed forces in terms of an enhancement of our men, equipment, and institutional capital. Furthermore, you will be able to witness the accomplishment of the targets set for the year 2000 in terms of illicit crop eradication and struggle against paramilitary forces, subversive groups, and non-trafficking. My government's commitment Second, then will be the presentation by Minister of Finance, Mr. Juan Manuel Santos. He will present you with our achievements in terms of the reestablishment of macroeconomic stability, display the results of our commitment to fiscal adjustment and rationalization. Such results are what we consider to be the foundations upon which economic prosperity can be built. And subsequently, Mr. Santos shall share with you our economic agenda towards the future, comprising the ongoing policies reform for the accomplishment of long-term targets. My government's commitment to the achievement of peace can be displayed through Plan Colombia. Hence, Mr. Gonzalo de Francisco, advisor to the Presidency, will present this comprehensive strategy to you, describing our objectives and achievements in terms of fundamental pillars upon which the strategy is based, namely the political negotiation of the armed conflict, economic and social recovery, the confrontation of drug dealing and institutional strengthening, and social development. In last year's meeting, there was consensus regarding the significance of enhancing communication systems as means to promote globalization and deepen Colombian insertion to the international markets. The targets that have been established in this direction are contained in a comprehensive strategy titled the Connectivity Agenda. The communicated advisors to the President, Claudia de Francisco, will show you in detail the plan we have devised so as to make Colombia a leader in usage, access, and production of information technology. Considering the importance that my government has given to export as a key element in our strategy to place Colombia upon a sustainable economic growth path, the Minister of Foreign Trade, Marta Lucía Ramírez, will be presenting this afternoon our export promotion program. A consistent commercial and investment policy has been designed and implemented by means of our strategic export plan and the productivity and competitiveness policy. Such policies have led to very positive outcomes during the last year, as is proved by the remarkable performance of export and an outstanding improvement in competitive indicators. Thereby, it can be said we have performed well in providing the means for export to stimulate the recovery in economic activity. By now, I hope it is clear that Colombia is a country with enormous growth potential. However, in order to boost economic activity, we need to develop opportunities that can displace the illegal drug business that is nourishing the armed conflict we are facing. The growth of illicit crops is destroying our biodiversity and eroding the foundations of our institutions. The cost of this conflict is additionally magnified in the 200,000 Colombians that have resultantly lost their lives between 1984 and the present. The world has to understand that drug trafficking is not independent from other problems that Colombia faces. Therefore, in order to build the foundations for peace, it is not only necessary to reduce feasibility of illicit drugs industry, but to promote the enhancement of other economic activities. We cannot do this alone. Colombia and our peers in the Andean region have so far been left alone in this struggle, but we do not have the resources to carry the burden of drug eradication programs and endure the perverse effects of drug trade. I have proposed an alliance between producer and consumer nations based on the principles of co-responsibility and equity. This means that consumer countries have to do much more to control their citizens' appetite for drugs, to control money laundering, to control the sales of chemical precursors, and of course, to halt illegal arms trade. Furthermore, the establishment of export incentives and preferential access to international problems can grant feasibility to legal economic activities. What do we have to do in order for the world to realize that this is the problem as well? This is a global problem that demands a global solution. Drug trafficking is not an isolated phenomenon. Let me conclude by saying that the road ahead is not free of risk and difficulties, but the map is clear and focused. We are confident that the economic program, combined with international support for the Plan Colombia, will lay the basis for sustained growth. In the way, together we can create prosperity with justice, paving the way for a lasting peace. As you can see, a long day lays ahead. We are all waiting to hear your ideas. Please keep in mind that everything you might have to say to help us to improve in any way is very valuable to all of us. And I'm sure at the end of the day, we are all going to be satisfied with this productive, challenging, and most of all, creative day. So now I formally declare, inaugurate the meeting of the Millenium Board. So from now is formally open. Thank you very much.